Hi guys, welcome back to Waxing On. It's Monday, so that means jazz. And today we're actually going to look at an artist we've talked about before. That was back in episode 3. It was probably our first jazz episode when we looked at the music of Chuck Mangione. And at that time we focused on the Mercury years, when he first broke onto the scene. Now, the first albums, and these were a big deal, these were albums PBS recorded the concert and they showed it on TV, and of course I'd seen it there, which really piqued my interest. But as well, they were double albums. And this is a new recording artist coming out, getting double albums, which was really surprising for debuts. And these were full orchestra, guest soloists. We had Marvin Stamm was in playing trumpet for them in the first album. Esther Satterfield, Don Potter, his brother Bat McGrath. I mean, big productions. And this was what the first two albums were. We had Friends in Love and Together. And to me, this was very similar to what I saw. When I saw Chuck the first couple of times in Toronto at the Keefe Center, he was doing these kind of productions. Orchestra, he'd have dancers, he'd have soloists. Esther Satterfield was there, Potter was there. It was great. And one of these times was the time I actually got to see Lou Soloff play. Now, Lou was there doing his song, Feel of a Vision, that Chuck had written for him, and you may remember it from the first album, The Friends in Love, where Marvin Stamm covered that song. But these were what he was doing in the early 70s. Up till the last Mercury album that I talked about was The Land of Make-Believe, which he also recorded in Toronto at Massey Hall. After that, he switched labels and went to A&M Records. And that's what we're going to look at tonight. A&M recordings were probably where Chuck really came to the masses. People got to know him, they started following. This was his most profitable and popular era, from what I remember. I mean, this is where most people got their first taste of Chuck Mangione, a little more commercial, not like those earlier albums, but this is where he was having #1 hits. He was selling all kinds of records. He was touring like crazy. Every year I pretty much went to see him. Every year he had a 2-day stand at Ontario Place in Toronto. Toronto really loved Chuck Mangione. He did a lot of stuff there, and he was a regular. And that's where we would often go to see him. But he started touring with the band. And at this point, he wasn't touring with the big orchestra. He was touring with the quartet, or in the later days, quintet. But let's take a look at some of these albums he had, just to show you what kind of stuff he's covered. And probably one of the ones that people first remember is the old Chase the Clouds Away. And that was a big hit for him. Now this time he's changed the band up a little bit. Still have Jerry Nywood on saxophone, and I think he was just a great player. We've got a couple other players that he's played with before, Joe LaBarbera on drums and Chip Jackson on electric bass. Just to give you some idea, there's our bandmates and Chuck on the back. And again, his style has changed now. Mercury years, one style. A&M, a very different style. Columbia years, man, it was a very, very different style. This was where Chuck really became popular and really made his name. At this point, even, I remember Downbeat had an article, and they just kind of gave credit to certain musicians, just a little blurb in their yearbook. And they were calling Chuck the most honest, no-hype talent around. And this was true at this point in the game. It was pretty interesting stuff. Again, I'll just go over some of the names of the songs, some of them you may remember. Song of the New Moon, Can't We Do This All Night, He Was a Friend of Mine, Ichano, Chase the Clouds Away, and a song called Soft. And that was the album, Chase the Clouds Away. Now, followed that one up with another album, Bellavia. Now, what's unique about these two albums? And get this one, I'll just go over the cast again for you. We got Chuck Mangione Quartet. He's got an orchestra with him. They don't list the quartet men on here. We don't know who's playing. It just says it's Chuck Mangione Quartet. Lou Soloff, lead trumpet, so he's helping out with the orchestra. And in both of these, the orchestra personnel coordinator was Kai Winding. I'm not sure how he pronounces that, but you know that great trombone player that was with J.J. Johnson in K&J. Now, what was unique about this? Again, he's using Bill Reichenbach on trombone. He used him a lot, and he's a big studio player now in Los Angeles. But I think both of these were recorded live in the studio. The orchestra, Chuck, they just walked in and played. This one, all music composed by Chuck. recorded at A&M Studios with live, without overdubs or added instrumentation. What you heard was what the band was playing. And that was great. That was great stuff. I'm just checking out this other one, recorded live, yep, A&M Studios in Hollywood. So we were still getting a little bit of the orchestra in there, although he was bringing in ringers. He was bringing in sidemen to play along with it. Now, on Bellavia, songs we might know. Come Take a Ride With Me, Listen to the Wind, Carousel, Bellavia, a song he'd written for his mother, Dance of the Wind-Up Toys, and Toriano. Oh, here we do now. I did find there was a listing on here now. They had it on the front cover, Jerry Nywood sax. We're still with Joe LaBarbera and Chip Jackson. So it is the same quartet we looked at during Chase the Clouds Away. Now, the next album, Chuck was there, but he kind of changed things up a bit. He got a little more commercial. In this one, it doesn't list a saxophone player. The album is Main Squeeze. And again, this is where he's really starting to peak in popularity. Now, at this point, the sidemen with him, we got Bob Mann on acoustic and electric guitar. First time we've been introducing guitar into here. John Tropia, also on guitar. Don Grolick on piano, Tony Levin on bass. Rubens Bassini doing percussion, Ralph McDonald percussion. Richard T. on organ, and Steve Gadd on drums. A lot of studio-sounding musicians in there. Again, I don't hear any of the quartet names in there, so I don't know. At this point, he wasn't even using saxophone, so things had quite changed around. Now, he did have some other people here. The last song, the big hit, Main Squeeze, looks like it was probably mainly improvised. A lot of the players got credit for it. Musical coordinator this time was Steve Gadd putting it together. And this one wasn't recorded live in the studio, but it was recorded and mixed at Electric Lady, which was a pretty commonplace for record albums at the time. Okay, so, and again, at this stage of the game, Chuck isn't touring with a band. When I'd seen him all through this era, it was just him and the quartet. And like I say, a little later, the quintet in there, but it was not the productions he used to put on. Next album, and this was another one I really enjoyed. Feels So Good. And again, a popular song. Most people will know that tune as being the Chuck Mangione song. Now he's changed the band. A whole new group in here, and this is the one he toured with for a good portion of the A&M years, and the ones I'd seen most often. We got Chuck Mangione, we've got Chris Vidala has joined him on saxophone. Grant Geisman, you may recognize that name. We may have mentioned him back during the Big Fat Band episode. He's playing guitar with Gordon Goodwin's Big Fat Band. Charles Meeks and James Bradley Jr. on drums. And again, all the selections composed and arranged by Chuck, so we know we've got that. Feels So Good, Maui Wowie. Theme from Side Street. Now, Side Street was a CBC television production, a police show, CBC being the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, filmed in Toronto. They tagged Chuck to do the theme song for their TV show. Again, there's that Toronto connection that Toronto really loved Chuck Mangione. Hide and Seek, Last Dance, and The 11th Commandment. Again, mainly quartet album, not a lot of extra players in here this time. Now, on one of these albums, and I'm trying to think which one it was, I'll just go back and double check whether it was Bellavia? No, I think it was this one here. He had one that, he had an awful lot of players. I mean, one time the orchestra consisted of Alan Rubin, Lou Soloff, John Faddis, Tom Malone, Wayne Andre, all the New York musicians. And that was basically what he was using to try and still get that orchestra feel without incorporating the large orchestras that he had previously. Then we're getting more commercial, and to me, does not seem as serious. Fun and games. Maybe that's the idea of the album, right? Still very popular at this point. Give It All You Got, You're the Best There Is, Pina Colada. Never Missed Someone Before, Give It All You Got But Slowly. And this is kind of a theme that comes up in the next album we look at too, the playing a song in one style and then changing the style up. Sound familiar? You know it does. And Fun and Games. Same band as before, right? Geisman, Meeks, Bradley, Vidala, and Chuck Mangione. Then Chuck Mangione got a call to do a soundtrack album for the movie Children of Sanchez. You may recognize that picture if you go back to our episode 3 where we had the first episode about Chuck Mangione. I had a photo or not a photo, very similar to this photo was a portrait that my wife had painted of Chuck Mangione. And we had that in the background as well. And that was a little gift she made for me. Now, this one being a soundtrack album, that's where we kind of get into that idea of hearing a theme more than once. A number of these songs are played, but altered somewhat, maybe in tempo, maybe somewhat in the orchestration, because in movies you do have these recurring themes. This one, to me, a lot of stuff in there. I think the theme song itself is just a classic, and he did play this often. The Children of Sanchez, great song. The album's worth checking out, but not as many variations of songs. It's again a soundtrack, so you do get a lot of background music and alterations to themes he's already introduced. Still well worth checking out, because at this point there really are no bad Chuck Mangione albums. Now the next one, and we're getting down to my list here. I mean, I got a lot of the A&M era. Live at the Hollywood Bowl. And this is really the first A&M album where Chuck really went back to his roots and brought in the orchestra, brought in soloists. It was a production very similar to what we'd seen back in the 70s. Same band as usual. It was recorded at the Hollywood Bowl. And nice packaging on this one. I mean, it's a 2-record set. You see a little bit there on the Hollywood Bowl scene. Little background on what was going on, rehearsals we had, and some shots at. Look at the size of the crowd they had there at the Hollywood Bowl to come out and see Chuck. Just get that turned over, and some more photos. And basically he's doing a lot of the A&M record material. You can see the rest of the band down there. There you go. Sorry about the light on the screen. But he's also sneaking a few older ones in. So side 1 consisted of Feel So Good, 11th Commandment, Chase the Clouds Away. Side 2, Hell Where the Lord Hides. Gosh, we haven't heard that since Friends in Love. So he reached really back into in the book to pull that one out. And again, that was probably the first thing I remember hearing him play. I mean, it was the first song on the first album of the first double set there. Doing Everything With You, Love the Feeling, I Get Crazy, Land of Make Believe on 3, so another throwback to the Mercury years, Hide and Seek, The Day After Our First Night Together, Children of Sanchez, the main theme, so from our soundtrack album, Bye Bye, Main Squeeze, and Feels So Good. So he's mixed a few of the old Mercury material songs in with what he's been doing with A&M. Kind of like a greatest hits of the A&M era, but thrown back in the idea that we've incorporated the orchestra again. It's very much a feel of what he used to do, and this was one of the few albums he did that on A&M. Now the last album I picked up on A&M, and this is probably the last time I had a chance to see him live. It was the National Arts Center in Ottawa. Chuck Mangione, 70 Miles Young. And I think they had a couple other albums maybe came out on A&M. Some of them might have been compilations or other things, but I don't think they were official releases like this. To me, this was the last official release he had. And the other fellow in the photo is his dad. Now, I remember at this concert, it was funny because selling out on the merchandising table, they had all the usual stuff, the records at that time. I don't even know if he had CDs out, but he had T-shirts and all kinds of collectibles. Who's selling for him but Papa Mangione? He's out there pitching the material, trying to promote his son, and working the merchandising table. We were actually talking to my wife and I for a while about what he was doing and how the tour was going, and she asked him to sign something for her, and he said, "Oh no, I'm no celebrity, I'm just here." He said, "Oh no." She said, "You're just as much a celebrity as the guy on stage. I mean, without him, we wouldn't have had Chuck Mangione playing that night, and him out supporting his son doing this, and at his age being out and working the merchandising table, that was pretty special." So that was my collection, and I like to think it's pretty extensive of the A&M years, which to me was where Chuck really made his mark, really made his name. We had Mercury years, where a few of us know who he was. We, discovered him early. We have the A&M years where the masses found out who he was and became fans. And his most popular and prolific era, and probably his most profitable era, and wrapped up with 70 Miles Young. He moved over to a new label, Columbia, and to me, the Columbia material just didn't stand up. I mean, for me, Mercury was my favorite. A&M was great because there was just so much material and so much opportunity to see him, and there were some good songs in there. Columbia, it didn't seem adventurous. To me, it felt like we played the melody over and over and over, and it didn't have the spirit of these earlier albums. So I'm probably not going to cover a lot of the Columbia albums. I have quite a few of them, but I really never felt they resonated with me. I never felt satisfied with them like I did with the A&M albums or the Mercury years. So if you get a chance, check them out. I mean, I was on the streaming network. They do have a selection of Chuck Mangione material. They don't have an extensive one. Maybe some other streaming networks do. I only checked one. Online you can buy things, but I'll tell you, the vinyl albums are coming back, and vinyl albums are really expensive online. So you're probably out better for a CD. There's some greatest hits packages that kind of incorporate a lot of them together. If you can get some of the originals, they're great things. Go through and experience them as they were meant to be released. It's just such a volume of material there. Anyways, if you're a Chuck Mangione fan, these are probably the years you will remember, and take a look and go back and revisit them. I mean, it's still great music. I was listening to a few of them over this week, and it's really a lot of fun. So that's it for today, revisiting Chuck Mangione, the A&M years. Hopefully we rekindled some memories for you, and you'll find some songs you'd like to go back and check out and enjoy again. Okay, that's it for Monday. We'll see you again on Wednesday when it's Classic Rock. Everybody, thanks for stopping by. Take care. We'll see you then.